On behalf of the whole IIT Roorkee community, I thank our esteemed guest, Mr. Amit Kumar, for providing their gracious presence to join us for this fireside chat to enhance our joy. His excellence and distinguished work in numerous capacities has volumes to impart us this evening on the theme Collaboration for Inclusive Growth under the series of events by us Beyond Differences, which aims to inspire youth to end social isolation and the overall objective of leaving no one behind. We envision an eyesight that sees into the differences, embraces them, and marches towards building inclusive spaces for all. Now, I'd like to welcome our speaker for today, Mr. Amit Kumar, the head of Inclusive Growth at United Nations Development Programme, UNDP India. He has more than 22 years of rich experience fostering sustainable economic development. He has previously worked with KPMG, GIZ, NSIC on diverse thematic areas. During his 11-year stint with GIZ, Amit led the design and development of multiple technical cooperation projects in the field of women and youth empowerment, MSME promotion and cluster development, skill, entrepreneurship and innovation system promotion, sustainable production and consumption, and many others. He has also worked with international policymakers and ecosystem actors from Germany, Netherlands, Austria, UK, Myanmar, Rwanda, and South Africa, and has advised them on policy design and capacity building measures. We welcome you for this evening today, sir.
Thanks a lot, Kavya, for such a lengthy and nice introduction. Thanks a lot to you and all the colleagues and the team members at NSS IIT Roorkee for inviting me. It's a pleasure personally and also on behalf of UNDP really to be here. We have been working with Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports on the NSS and YKS strengthening things. So it's really very pleasing to be here. More than sharing my wisdom or my experience, I am also looking forward to learn a lot from you guys, and so looking forward to this session.
Thanks a lot, sir. We also really look forward to today's conversation with you. So, coming to the conversation starter for today, having had 22 years of exemplary professional experience across social, private, and government sectors, can you tell us about your journey? Like, what inspired you to work in this sector, in the development sector, or what inspires you till date to stick to it?
Okay, so my journey, it's not anything I would say completely out of the world than any of the youth during my time. And when I say youth during my time, I'm talking about let's say 90s, early 90s specifically. It's similar to most of the youth who comes from let's say rural background. So I come from a small village in Bihar. And the journey is kind of, let's say, all of us, specifically those time, had gone through. So, what does the journey look like? Before I come to your question of what inspired me to really focus on development sector. And today, you guys are much more informed than what we could have hoped 23, 24 years back. Uh, 89 was the year, I think, the landmark year for me when I was deported from from Bihar to Delhi for higher studies and other things. Obvious choices that point of time was okay. If you are good in maths, then you'll try for engineering. If you are good in biology and others, then you try for medical. And the same was true with me, with family and other pressure. But definitely, I was not as intelligent or hardworking as all of you. So I couldn't land myself a seat in any of the good engineering college. So what next? Uh, Put myself into uh, uh, BSc Honors Physics, completed, and then again, coming from Bihar, coming from a rural setup, the next choices becomes that's okay. Now you have done your graduation, you try for civils. Luckily for me, now I can say I didn't fall into that trap because I was very sure it's not something that I wanted to do. So that's one more from the inclination point of view, and second also, I really wanted to do something where I could become financially self-dependent as early as I could be. And that drove me to pursue management as a kind of professional stream for my higher education. And From there, the journey has been, I think, some planned and some unplanned. So when I started my career as a management training with NSIC, and NSIC is, for all those who don't know, National Small Industries Corporation. It is a government of India's premier organizations working for the support and development of small and medium businesses. So that time, the whole happiness was that, okay, finally I have a job in my hand. I'm going to work. And that was, let's say, the key focus. That time I was not really knowing this is going to be the path 20 years or 23 years down the line. It was purely a management function job. But what really got me hooked to this whole idea of that's with our work, if you're helping somebody and the kind of satisfaction that's you get, that's the kind of some first inclination I started getting during my job. So what was my job during NSIC times, earlier as a management trainee and also during the later part of the year? It's involves organizing and various kind of exhibitions, organizing various kind of market search for specifically the businesses which are really micro and small. And remember, that's the time we are talking almost when we were not into this whole digital boom what we are. We didn't have the smartphones, we didn't have the internet accessibility and those kind of. So you are talking about a period where internet was just has come to the India, and all what we today take for granted. So if today we don't have a broadband or digital connectivity for 1 hour, we feel lost, right? So you are talking about that time, and I think the interactions that I had during my early years with the small and micro businesses spread across different part of the country, and how our work and sometimes just small help really make them so useful in their eyes and how it helps them. So that's really started me to think about that's where do I want to pursue. And from there, it has been some planned, some unplanned move during my career progressions. 8 years or so with government, and then I thought maybe it's enough. I need to uh, move out of the system, try to do something, be on the other side of the workspace, join private sector. Uh, and somehow luckily fall in place with the JZ stint. That has been a great learning experience. Also looking into and learning a lot from the German system of what you call the system thinking, the collaborations, and how you could really, when you're talking about development field, it's not only about activities and programs that we are doing, but how with our work we can really enable the systems to perform better, enable the systems to and system actors to interact better. So I think this has been the kind of all the learnings, experience, and growth. But the two key factors which I would pick: one, the satisfaction that you get from your work when it really touches and impacts the lives of anyone, and that's something that's. And second, also coming from a small village, really having seen, let's say, the challenges that many people in the country has to really go through, and if our with our work we can really do even a slight shift, positive shift, then that's always there. So I think that's how my journey has been, and it is still a journey which I think I'm learning each and every day. I'm experimenting, I think, still in my professional career a lot. So after 8, 9, 10 years, I keep on moving from one space, from the government to bilaterals to corporate side to now I am with UN. So that's how it has been.
Thank you, sir. That was inspiring. Yeah, and like it was very relatable at points because everyone here at NSS, like each of the NSS volunteers throughout the country, is actually driven by that satisfaction which you talked about of doing something or making an impact through the actions. So this was inspiring for all, I suppose. So, coming to the next question, like currently you told you're a part of UNDP. So, how relevant is UNDP in a constantly changing world like today's? And as the head of inclusive growth, where do you see UNDP in India in the next 10 years, or what do you envision for it?
Okay, very interesting question, Kavya. Right. So Your question has two elements. One thing you talked about the changing, constantly changing world, and second also, how do I personally see as a leading the inclusive growth portfolio UNDP's role in the next 10 years? Before I answer your question, maybe I'll take this opportunity to draw the attention of all colleagues who are here, either directly join the platform or listening on YouTube. So when we're talking about continuously changing landscape or continuously changing environment, so let's take a quick look on what is changing continuously and constantly. We talk about continuous change in the technology, right? And you guys are the best informed about that, being part of the premier technological institutes. You look into the whole uncertainties around the world, right? And today we are having these interactions on a digital platform. It's just one symptom of that uncertainties. Nobody knew 2 years back if you anybody would have told you that your 4 semester or 6 semesters would be all virtual. I think all of us would have laughed. Or for me, that's I don't need to go to office for almost 2 years, and still the work would continue. So there are a hell lot of uncertainty which is there. Some we know, some we really don't know. You have the uncertainty around the climate changes. More we know, I think we realize that less we know, and the kind of impact that it's creating on our lives. Inequalities, while the technology and the uncertainty, the climate, if you look at the inequalities, while the world is progressing, and so is India during the last 75 years or so, we have progressed a lot. But if you look into the inequalities, it's an inequalities on different levels, whether we talk about inequalities of income, inequalities of opportunities, inequalities of the gender, ecological, and all those things. So a lot of things are changing. On one side, you are having the global world, what we talk about, the world is becoming globalized. But we are also recently seeing it's also we are moving back to into the era of protectionism. Every country trying to protect their market, their own citizens. So it's a very interesting and difficult time also. So that's one side of the whole continuously changing world. On the other side, the next 10 year, I think all of you being part of NSS must be already aware about the global goals of sustainable development goals, right? SDG 2030. And this is the decade that we talk about, the decade of action. We are already at the end of 2021. So we are left with 9 years to achieve the global goals that most of the country have agreed upon. And if we really talking about a decade of action, where the progress that all the countries together, the world as a whole, but more specifically, if you look at the India, India had progressed a lot during the last, I would say, 3 or 4 decades, overall 75 years. But if you look into as a kind of landmark year is the 90s economic reforms, where actually the pace of growth started becoming much more than what it was. So we have progressed a lot, but still the key issue, inequalities, which I talked about. And if you guys are reading, definitely take a look at the recently released inequality report, World Inequality Reports, which talks about overall in the world, the inequality has risen. And just one figure to quote for you that in India, when you're talking about 10% of the populations in India enjoys control or let's say access to 57% of the wealth. So you are talking about that dimensions. And COVID has not done anything to really help everything what we are talking about. So the whole move towards achieving sustainable development goals by country, by world, and specifically as we are talking in the context of India, for UNDP India. The role of UN agency per se, but specifically also UNDP. UNDP being the lead development agency of UN, all the UN agency. Definitely, in one word I have to use, then I could answer your question. It's highly relevant, the role of UNDP in a country like India. While progressing very well, we are already into the middle income countries, emerging economies, and everything. But why do I say that UNDP is very relevant? and the role of UNDP is highly relevant in this fast-changing world, because UNDP and the UN agency per se, but focusing on my role at UNDP, we play the role of what you would call a very honest, neutral knowledge broker and facilitator. Uh, the system works better when the different actors, and I was talking about this during my earlier remark, system works better, any system, when the actors collaborate with each other. So with our neutral, honest knowledge breaking and facilitation role, we really play a very important convening role of bringing different actors and stakeholders together, so that we could collectively think about the solutions that is going to really alleviate the problems and the challenges for the poor and marginalized. So that's one aspect. Second, as an agency which is working across various thematic area, right? So we are not just focusing on either skilling, livelihood, or environment. So UNDP has a much wider mandate in that sense, and we are working across different themes, and most of them are linked with this whole SDG goals. And what we call ourselves also as a role of an SDG integrator. And for a country like India, we are working with institutions like Niti Aayog, many of the states in that role of SDG integrator. And in this decade of actions, that's definitely going to further enhance. Uh, Also, UNDP, because we have to, and your question, why I asked that very interesting questions, because uh, today's UNDP is not the UNDP of, let's say, two decades back, and more so for a country like India, emerging economy. More than we are not a donor per se, we have evolved and still evolving ourselves as a development partner of choice, right? And what does it mean for us internally? That we need to continuously and constantly keep innovating ourselves. How do we really help the state and central governments, work with the private sector partners, work with the civil society organizations, so that our work really makes an impact, not only just at the top macro level of policy, but also at all three levels, what we also term as a kind of, let's say, elevator approach. So you work on the micro level, which is with the beneficiary directly affecting the lives of the people, but also capacity building of ecosystem actors and all those players. So that's basically what we use, that next gen UNDP, which is innovative, which is agile, which has the tools and systems to really work and collaborate with different actors in this fast changing world, is highly relevant. And we see ourselves, if you say in one word or two word, if I have to use, I would say that's the role of an ecosystem enablers, which is contributing, I can't say that which is making, but with our work, which is contributing and supporting the governments and all other development actors to deliver a better impact through collective work. So that's something that's I would say. And I'll just also ask, just give you an example or ask you to think, that's why this whole point, which I'm harping upon again and again, that's a system works better if the actors collaborate, and if there is a smooth flow of informations and activities and coordinations. Most of you must be having the mandate to do different projects, I think, during your semesters, sometimes individual projects and sometimes the group project. I am sure if you think deeply and reflect upon, you may notice that's when you are working closely in a group projects where the exchange of information, the trust, all participants are equal, then the outcome of that is different from when you are either working alone or your group dynamics is, let's say, kind of affected by something. So that's the whole, let's say, essence of our way of working. And the next 10 years is a very challenging times for us. So along with the SDG integrator ecosystem enablers, we also see ourselves in this role of kind of, let's say, setting the agenda of development. And I don't know how many of you really watched the recent, when the COP 26 was happening. one of the very interesting kind of clip which was used by UNDP, using the dinosaur to deliver a message of fossil fuel free world. So I think these are the contexts in which we are here, and we see the role of UNDP over the next 10 years. Looking from inclusive growth, last 30 seconds, I don't want you guys to bore to the death with all the UNDP talk, but next 10 years from an inclusive growth point of view is much more and highly relevant, because on one side, we notice that the growth which we have witnessed in the pre-COVID times have been pretty good, but it has not been the growth which you can by any mean talk about where everybody is participating or able to participate. Uh, we have been reading about the terms like jobless growth and those kind of things. And second, the COVID has, as I was saying earlier, has further increased the challenges, increased the whole inequalities a lot. So it's a very important and highly relevant how we can continue to work with the government, with private sector, with CSOs to create a more inclusive and better society. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. It was very insightful indeed. And especially the impact of COVID-19 on this sector and the growth and the programs that UNDP has been running. So, coming to the next question, what really makes inclusive growth a necessity for progress in a country like India? Or why is collaboration key for inclusive growth, which is the very theme of today's conversation?
I think I have answered. Thank you, Kavya. So I answered your question partly, I think, in my last two. But let's take a different dimensions to what do we term when we say that inclusive growth? What does it mean to us, right? And for you specifically, if most of you, I assume that you are currently either in your bachelor's or postgrad, pursuing most of you in the technology domain. Maybe some of you are in the management, but no, I don't have a clue about it. And that's why it's always so much better to have a physical interactions where you could really have the dialogues and interactions rather than just. So when we talk using the term inclusive growth, by growth, we means when the economy is growing, let's say, or when as a nation we are growing. And you normally, let's say, uh, uh, you normally associate growth with economic growth, right? When we are using the term inclusive growth, what do we mean by that term? It's very important for us. As I was saying earlier, as a country, we have grown quite a lot. We have progressed quite a lot in the last 75 years, in 74, 75 years, and specifically in the last two and a half decades. However, the growth has not been inclusive. What does that mean? What it means is the growth has not enabled each and every section of the society to participate and benefit from that growth, right? While some people have become more richer, and that's also the report which I was referring. If you look into the inequality in income distribution, uh, where countries' overall resources, 57% is just owned by 10% of the population. That's not definitely a kind of growth model which is going to help a country like us with huge young populations and overall also the huge populations. So it's important for us to really understand that's how we can collectively work toward achieving a growth model which is inclusive, which allows each and every section of the society, and more so in a country like India, where you have so many different type of, let's say, diversities. Whether you are talking about ethnic diversity, whether you are talking about linguistic diversities, religion diversities. So we are a country of enormous diversities. The people living in a far small village, how that growth could deliver access to opportunity for that person, is that's the kind of growth model, and that's what do we mean by inclusive growth. And though when you're talking about inequality, it is mostly we associate with the income inequalities. But in today's world, what do we also see that along with the income inequalities, the inequalities in access to opportunities, access to basic services, that's driving the gap much more than just the income inequalities. So the point of how could you move towards from the current growth model to a growth model which becomes inclusive? And it's not that there is something any a new scientific kind of formula, or that you can just develop some solution which is going to make everybody benefit and participates. Yes, the technology has been a great enabler. You could reach out, you could provide many of the services which was earlier unthinkable for us. You couldn't really imagine. So technology as an enabler, yes, but overall the growth model to become inclusive, what do we need? As I was saying earlier, an ecosystem which is collaborative, where, and it is also not something that only the government can achieve, or a development agency, whether it is UNDP, whether it is any other agency can achieve, uh, nor it can be achieved by private sector alone, and neither the civil society organizations. So that's why for us to really have an development model which is inclusive, which is leading to the integrated local economic development approach, if you're talking about where the people don't have to migrate just in search of job, let's say. If the majority of the people could find the economic and productive engagement activities within their neighborhood, then that would be a great solutions. And for all of these to achieve, we need the model which is really enabling each actors to collaborate, to work better, to supplement and to complement each other's effort, because each one of them bring a different pluses on the table. None of us have all the solutions, none of us have all the competencies. So when a private sector collaborate with development actors and partners, the innovative thinking, the innovative solutions, the business models that it brings to look at the same problem, which many times we development practitioners are not able to think, right? That's great. If you look into the whole startup ecosystem, and there are young people like you who are creating solutions which is driven by that's how can I solve a certain problem, right? So when you're going with that kind of a mindset, you are not just only creating an enterprise, but you are becoming a very important actor into this, what you would call how do we make our city, our village, our communities, and our country move towards a more of an inclusive growth model. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, moving on to the next question, which is, I think, quite relevant to the audience present here. Being such a successful profession in the industry, what skills, according to you, are relevant for young budding professionals like us, I think, those who are joining the session?
I think I'm too old to give you any yarn on this, but let me make an attempt, right? I'm sure all of you know what do you need to succeed in your, specifically along with reference to your domain skills. So I'm not going to talk about domain or technical skills. No, you are successful, and that's why you are here. And wish all of you a very great success in future. But coming to, let's say, if I pick let's say not a domain or technical skills, I would harp on the need to really for all of us, and which I have learned hard way, is what you would call the transferable skills, right? Skills which is not linked to a particular job role, or a particular like a company or something, what normally you also term as a 21st century skill sets. So for me, that's something really very important for youth, and specifically for youth who don't get the exposure of the kind of exposure that you and I had as a kind of going through our educational and others, but specifically the youth who are into the villages, into the small towns, and they don't have that exposure. So that's one. And second thing I would say for us to really take a note that for me, when I started my career in 1998, I think it was still okay for first, I would say, 10 years or 15 years of my career. That's I could continue and do my work with the same skill set what I learned during the professional qualification, but also during my first few years of working experience. But skills are fast changing in today's world, right? So this whole ability and openness to learn and relearn our skills, that's very important, right? So we have to continuously keep on skilling, upskilling, reskilling, and keep on looking for that opportunities. But most important, I would say, forget about the skills and other things or anything what I talked about. To be successful, what I would harp on is what the attitude. And when I use the word attitudes, I'll just also maybe further distinguish along the different dimensions. So one thing which I said, that attitude and openness to learn and relearn. Sincerity towards whatever you are doing. If you are in a job, then sincerity towards that one. If you are pursuing a passion to really that you want to become an entrepreneur, so you have some sincere, because the success won't be happening in a jiffy. It may take much more time than what you would have initially would have thought or planned for. Then uh, being responsible or taking responsibility, and this I'm talking more from the point of view of all of those who are looking to join as a professional in one company or another. That's it's always not that's your manager or your somebody is going to give you the or going to hold your hand and walk you through the journey. So you being responsible for what your work, what you have to deliver and proactive is going to help you in a pretty good feed. And two more points I would say, along with taking responsibility, let's continue to keep the focus on what you are delivering is you are taking full control of at least at what level you are or you would be of the quality and the time. These are, I think, a kind of non-negotiable more so into the professional world. And last point uh, would borrow from the theme of the session. That's be open and collaborate as much as you can. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Coming to the last question for today, which is, I think, very close to all of us because we are members of NSS. As volunteers of the National Service Scheme NSS, we are constantly looking for ways in which young people can contribute to issues of national importance like these. So, how do you think we can participate in the agenda of inclusive growth by UNDP or the 2030 agenda?
Thank you, Kavya. Very again a very important question. And before coming here, I took out some time also to go through your NSS IIT Roorkee, what you guys are doing. So, and I think without any hesitation, I can say with conviction the kind of work that you guys are doing already with 1,000+ community members. You are already contributing towards that inclusive growth agenda. When you talk about that, you are working on women economic empowerment. When you are talk about you are working on, if I recall right, digital literacy, providing access to services for the poor and marginalized. That's what basically. So you are already there, you are already contributing as a community towards that agenda. However, what I would suggest to each one of you, that's each one of us is driven by a certain passion, or we are more interested in one thing compared to another, right? And that's a human nature. Even if you look at the music, you look at the movies, uh, some people like thrillers, some people like rom-com, someone like so, and similar to that one, I think each one of us is more passionate about one cause compared to other. Mm. So it would be good for us as a community and for each one of you to really reflect, think that's okay, what am I most passionate about, right? Whether I want to contribute towards climate cause, whether I want to contribute towards gender equality cause, whether I want to work on health issue, whether I want to work on the issue of improving the education outcome for kids who don't have the access which you and I had, or which our families have. So pick your cause and then work towards work to on that cause through different means. One, definitely as a part of this community, but also see that's how you can develop more network around that one. Who are the other either the community or some other resource person who is working on this? What are the different things that others are doing, and how can I bring those elements into our work, or that's I am doing. So I think these 3 or 4 things. One, uh, be a little more choosy and selective about the cause that you want to pursue, because as I was saying earlier, it's not possible for us to really do a big change alone, or even as 1,000 community members on various things. So, if you already have your geography defined, it would be good for you as a community to understand that's okay. If I'm working in a particular geography, I don't know, I'm just making certain assumptions and hypotheses that, let's say, if you are based in Roorkee and if you're focusing on, let's say, Western UP, yes or no, I don't know, but just making that assumption. Um, can I take this step? That's okay. What are the key issues around which the community needs, or where we can do? And from that issue, prioritize certain things. And then from your volunteer base, there could be different tasks, subtasks, which is working and taking proactive measures. So that's one. And simultaneously look to build network, look to build alliances beyond just the academic community. I think the exercise that you guys are doing currently, this whole series, what I understand, that's one very good way to connect with different resource person, different stakeholders, and don't just stop here. Look at the different good practices, best practices that could be, because there are different solutions lying in the ecosystem, right? And you don't have to invent everything. Even just taking a solution which has worked well in some other communities, some other localities, if you can just take that, bring it to the communities where you are working, that could be a big game changer. You know? Because jokingly in the development sector, we also talk about that India is a is a graveyard of pilots. So we have so many pilots successful, but we are not able to always scale those up. So look towards not doing everything on your own. Prioritize, pick certain successful models which has worked somewhere, and then how you can really help in replication and scaling up. I think that would be a lot, but definitely, as I said in the beginning, you guys are already contributing towards inclusive growth agenda, and that's really a great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We shall try to incorporate your suggestions and advice in our upcoming initiatives. So, as we come to the end of the questions, there is a very short rapid fire round. Like I'll be asking 5 questions back to back. So, we would want to have your take on this to make it interesting for the audience as well. So, should I go ahead, sir?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, if you could change one thing about your career path, what would it be?
Okay. Uh, maybe I would have changed the time when I decided to exit from some of the previous organizations. That's one thing. Otherwise, I think it has been a pretty good journey. So maybe exiting my time much better, or timing my exit much better than what I did. Yeah.
Okay. The next, the 3 major vulnerable groups that need the most attention under the inclusive growth agenda, according to you.
That's a tough one to answer, to be honest, and I won't like to attempt, because as soon as you are using the vulnerable group, it's very difficult to pick one against the, another. So it's each one of them, whether you're talking about tribal, whether you're talking about religious minorities, whether you're talking about LGBTIQ, whether you're talking about person with disabilities, each one of them have different sex workers, etc. So I really won't dare to pick top 3, because each one of them are equally important.
Okay. Next, what is your source of inspiration and creativity in one word?
One word. That's a tough one. That's the one word. Well, no, but I draw my inspiration. So I don't have any one personality-based kind of inspiration, to be honest. Uh, I draw my inspirations from different personalities. So I would say always being open to observe is something that's helping me a lot in our walks of life, in different personalities. So I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Three words that describe your leadership style.
Yeah, that I can do pretty well, I think. Trust, delegation, and empathy.
Okay. And last, what do you like about UNDP's work culture?
That's many things, but if I just have to pick one or two, I would say uh, flexibility and to innovate. That's one. And second, the whole team overall is highly passionate about the work that we do. So the passion towards our work and the flexibility to innovate in our approaches, these are the two good things. But there are many more. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a
I
lot,
think that
Kavya.
was about the session. We have few questions lined up in the Q&A box, so I can read them out for you. So we have this question for from Arindam, who is pursuing masters in biotech. In India, we see isolated growth mentality mostly, rather than collaborative growth target in the unorganized sector and agriculture, which is by far major source of income for most of the population in the rural areas. What do you think? How can we make them or join them the stream of growth?
Yeah, Arindam, I'm just thanks for first of all for that very I think important question. You are right that most of the people in India is dependent on the agriculture. I'm not sure we can say that if that is the major income source, because if that would have been the case, then definitely we would have been in much better positions. So this, yes, agriculture is one sector where majority of the people either employed or what you call underemployed or pseudo employment exist. Um, this and this is not only a problem in India, I would say. The larger question, it's easy for us to talk about collaborations. And even I would say the example which I was giving earlier, collaboration takes effort, right, from all of us. Collaborations happens between people. Even collaboration does not happen between institutions. So this silo, what you call the silo approach, and that exists within organization, that exists within a state, within country, and so that's there. I don't know what can be there is one mantra or one solutions, but I think being sensitive, being aware about the advantage of that's if we are going to work together, we would achieve results faster and we would achieve better results, have led to a situation, and specifically more so if not at a state or nation level. If you look at more of a smaller pockets of intervention, smaller geography, you would see the programs which have worked better are those where the different actors have come together and collaborated with their competencies, with their area of strength. So it's a journey, in my view. If I say it, that it is not first thing that it is not something unique to us only. It's a, I would say global phenomena. Collaboration doesn't come easily, so there is no easy answer to that one. So it is something that we continuously have to work towards educating different stakeholders, creating awareness about the advantage and methods and tools of collaborations. And that is what is going to lead us to an ecosystem where rather than making it a forced collaborations, we are into a situations where it becomes an automatic collaborations, or let's say natural collaborations, what you would say. And last point also that somewhere uh, when we are not looking at it only from the development actors' point of view, sometimes when do we want the system actors who may have their economic interest, then we also need to look at that, okay, what is the business model or what is the incentive for different actors who have a business interest to collaborate. So these are some of the key, I think, pointers which I would flag for a brief answer. Otherwise, this is a topic on which we can go on for, I think, we could have another 1 hour of session on this. Yeah. I hope I have
Thank you, sir.
answered your questions somewhat in them. Yeah.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Jay. The overall objective of the session has been linked with leaving no one behind. What is the criteria to gauge the vulnerability of an individual in that case?
Okay. So that's again a very, very important, and it's good that's the leaving no one behind, because that is a mandate in which all the UN agencies, and that's the SDG mandate, right? There are well-defined criteria when you are talking about vulnerability, right? So you have the what you call the economic vulnerability, but more than that, if you look into and what we are talking about today, what you would call the multidimensional poverty index, right? So it is just not the income criteria which defines, but also the poverty in terms of access to, as I was saying earlier, the basic services and others. And there are already different, let's say, criteria which is well established, whether you can look at MPI index, if you are looking into the Human Development Report, which publishes by UNDP, if you are looking from the UN India specific point of view, you could also refer to NITI Aayog's HDI index and all those. So there are well established criteria. But if you ask me personally, then I prefer the MPI, the multidimensional poverty, much because that gives you a much holistic kind of things rather than just trying to look the vulnerability only from economic point of view. And another dimensions would be that's looking at the whole issue of resilience to shocks, and withhold oneself from the uncertainties of future.
Thank you, sir. Coming to the next question, this is by Aditi. Are creating opportunities the only need for inclusive growth? What role does the mindset of the people play in building inclusive spaces for all?
I'm just also reading so that I'm getting her question right. So just give me a moment. So Aditi, the first part of your question, no, that's not the only need for inclusive growth, creating opportunities. What you are talking about when I was using the term, or we were discussing about the inclusive growth, that's a growth model which enables everybody to participate in and benefit from the growth opportunity. However, the key question of mindset, that's one of the key, I think, very important issue. And maybe I'll just try to explain that point. If you take the women economic empowerment agenda, right, or the gender inequality issue, which as a country, when we are talking about India's female labor force participation, we are one of the lowest in the world. And even that low ratio in the last continuously we are declining. And why it is happening? Though access to or enrollment into education of female child has increased a lot, whether at the primary, secondary, and even at the higher and other research. And there comes the role of the what you call the societal mindset or individual mindset. So mindset definitely is a very important issue. And even if you look, forget about the inclusive growth, even if you look into today's vaccination situation today, right? Vaccines are available, but there are certain people who have the vaccine hesitancy. And this is all about what you would call either the mindset or lack of right informations, their preconceived notion biases. So yes, the mindset is an important issue when you are talking about uh, building an inclusive growth or inclusive society, because many of the things can't just happen by certain policies or programs or developing the skills of the people. Because from our program, and all of you must be already be experiencing in your personal walks of life, you would know certain many examples where, let's say, either the girls are not allowed to pursue educations beyond a certain point, or even though she's highly qualified, she has got a job, but she's not allowed to work because of different reasons. And we have seen those things in our programs also. And there, in those situations, we have taken really a kind of what you would call the measures where we have to invest a lot of energy and resources in educating community, in removing those misconceptions, notions, to really make the whole community's mindset change towards accepting these kind of changes what we are talking about. So yes, mindset of the people is very important, and in many of the issues as development practitioners, we always need to work towards change in mindset through either about the physical interactions, training, BCC, or even now we are experimenting with use of, let's say, something behavior insight nudges using the technology of Facebook and others. That's whether if you could send the right messages, as people spend a lot of time on social media and others, can it lead to a better behavior among men and boys? So that, for example, if you talk about, let's say, the share of unpaid care work in case of girls and women, if the men starts taking more responsibility at home, definitely that creates and provides that much extra time for girl and woman to really pursue her area of interest, academic or work-wise. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think that was it about the Q&A session. Uh, I'd like to thank you for sparing time out of your busy schedule to grace the event with your esteemed presence. It was very enlightening for the audience to hear you all this while. Now I'd like to invite our General Secretary, NSSIT Roorkee, Mr. Ujjwal Kumar, to present the vote of thanks.
Yeah,
Over to you, sir.
yeah, greetings to one and all present here. It was an honor to me and NSSIT Roorkee to get the opportunity to listen and chat with Mr. Amit Kumar today. I would like to express my utmost gratitude toward our guest, Mr. Amit, on behalf of NSSIT Roorkee for his stirring words and answers. While people have experienced the loss in life and income amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, amplifying the difference in adversarial way, it is important we recover our force toward inclusive growth, including the attitudes of the opportunity, capability, and access and security. And hence, it was very relevant for all of us present here. Your words truly allow us, the attendees, to see the topic in a different way and put the things in perspective. It gave us a deeper insight and made us to appreciate the intricacy of the subject also. It, it would be our immense pleasure to invite you once again to spread the awareness around the subject in the near future. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again. Over to
Thanks
you.
a lot to Ujjwal, Kavya, and all the colleagues for taking out time to listening, for listening to me. I hope I was able to give you some
Yeah,
orientation toward the agenda. The time spent was good for you because 1 hour giving your time, I really appreciate. And most importantly, as I said earlier, thank you for giving me and UNDP the opportunity to share our thoughts, to share our area of work with all of you. I would definitely look forward to interact more with you guys, and but specifically when the things are a little better, if we could come over and have a physical interactions, because it's always so much interesting for me to listen to you guys what do you think, and where what we could do differently. So I would like to do maybe a fireside chat which is in reverse order, right? So thanks a lot. Yeah.
sir.
Thank you, sir. As I see, the participation on WebEx as well as YouTube was in great numbers today, and that just fulfills the purpose of the event. As I conclude the session, I thank everyone for their time, attention, and participation. We look forward to more such collaborations with Mr. Amit and UNDP to keep hosting such events aimed at creating an impact. Thank you all.
Thank you. Wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance, all of you. Thanks. Right.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah.